we did a reaction, or I did a reaction, which I'm not posted on my channel. Doesn't feel like it was good enough. There was a State of the Union last night, and a video we reacted to was about 100-year-old veteran Royce Williams from no, I'm not gonna disable my ad blocker. Go fuck off. So we're gonna use the U.S. Army's website for this one. Doesn't have an image though, but his name is Mr. Not just Mr. That'd be insulting. Navy Captain, Sir, I'm gonna call him Sir, Captain Royce Williams, who is 100 years old as of today, or as of this year, and as of me saying this today. And Royce Williams, I watched a video on by YarnHub, who released a video about a couple of weeks ago to a month ago about when he flew his F-9F Navy Panther and flew in the Korean War with his flight on a bombing run, which was interrupted when a flight of 7 MiG-15s from Vladivostok came into contact with him. And these weren't just, you think Korean War, you get North Korean fighter pilots. Vladivostok has been underneath Russian territory. He countered MiG-15 fighter jets, honchos of the Soviet Red Army's Air Force. MiG-15 BIS, which were actually in technical superiority, completely superior to the F-15 Panther, to the F-9F Panther. However, Royce Williams, with his flight cut down in half, with one heading home for technical issues, and his wingmen being sent home to escort said aircraft back, him and his wingman would go on to engage in a 7-on-2 dogfight, where Royce Williams himself scored 4 kills against some of Soviet Russia's top aces, or top pilots, not just top, a top ace and the top pilots of their Air Force. In an engagement that for about nearly on 50 years was covered up underneath black tape and redaction because it would have caused an international incident in the possible Third World War. Royce Williams had these kills only in media you would see it with edited and docked audio and gun camera footage, where they had to remove the singular red star on the aircraft because they couldn't edit it back then for the Chinese red star. Royce Williams would then go on to live most of his life as a fairly good career in the Vietnam War, a fairly good military career in the Air Force, and the United States Navy air units. But he would end up retiring, and no one would have known of him until the 2000s, and underneath the Trump administration, recognized his service. Recognized in full what he did and the accomplishments he did in a single flight, scoring 4 kills. As of yesterday, the 100-year-old Navy Captain Royce Williams is now a Medal of Honor recipient in the Congressional Medal of Honor. After all these years, 70 plus years, 75 years almost, Royce Williams has achieved the highest honor a U.S. serviceman can receive. I'm so proud for the man. On top of that, let's not forget that while he got the Medal of Honor, another man, Army Chief Warrant Officer 5, Eric Slover, in his recent military operation in Venezuela, received a Medal of Honor himself. During the capture of Nicolas Maduro, and he was the one who's responsible in the main planning for a helicopter mission involving the CH-47 Chinook. As per, let's pull this up, the U.S. Army's website. So Slover planned a mission and was a flight lead of the cockpit of the first helicopter, Trump said. Eric steered the Chinook under the cover of night and descended swiftly upon Maduro's heavily protected military fortress. The area, Trump said, was heavily guarded by the thousands of soldiers. While preparing to land, enemy machine guns fired from every single angle, and Eric was hit very badly in the leg and hip, one bullet after another. He absorbed 4 agonizing shots, shredding his leg into numerous pieces. You can see him on stage, which we're going to pull up just here. During his Medal of Honor recipient, he is the definition of a corn-fed, basically, he's a juggernaut of a soldier. An absolute juggernaut. And you can see him. Might as well pull this image up in full. You can see him and Captain Royce Williams together. Men that should receive our unwavering respect. And they have gone far and above to beyond any LARPing or anything I could ever make up could go for. These guys are true American heroes. Heroes actually nonetheless to and inspirations to any man across the Western Hemisphere. If not Eastern Hemisphere, if not the world. I will never be as brave as these guys are. I will never be as talented as Royce Williams. I will never be as cognizantly able as Eric Slover. But they earned the world's undying and unwavering respect for anyone who has a half a brain. Any man with a shred of testosterone in their blood should feel the urge to come close to achieve a fraction of what they did. And it's great to see they could receive the Medical Congressional of Honor. It's an honor to be in the same room with you, Trump said after awards were presented. Thank you both. I know we're jumping up between articles, but we'll come right back to the U.S. Army one. It's an honor for you to be in the same room with you, Trump said after the awards were presented. Thank you both. Also on Tuesday, Trump awarded the Legion of Merit to Coast Guard rescue swimmer, Petty Officer, 2nd Class Scott Ruskin, who helped rescue 165 people from a girls' summer camp during last year's deadly flood in Texas, which was a horrific event. Cost, was it like 40 girls or 30 of the girls went missing? I gotta look that up. Trump also awarded the Purple Heart to Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew, and I don't want to be dismissive of it. It was a tragic event. I remember watching and keeping up to news update on it. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible case of a natural disaster and poor mismanagement to get them out, but it was also the bravery of these men to make sure that toll count wouldn't get as high as it would have been. Also wore the Purple Heart to Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf and Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom of the West Virginia National Guard. Both Wolf and Beckstrom were shot in November while serving in Washington, D.C. Beckstrom, who died of wounds, received the war posthumously. Yeah, I remember that attack. The White House did not issue any official statements prior to Tuesday's address about Williams and Slover receiving the Medal of Honor. However, Trump gave a speech earlier this month at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, during which he said that one of the service members who took part in the Maduro mission would get the award. He did not say who specifically. We're going back here. President, yep. It's an honor to be in the same room with you. Yep. Here we go. A secret battle and a near miss. In the early mornings of January 3rd, helicopters in the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment carrying Delta Force special operators arrived at Maduro's compound in Venezuela's capital of Caracas. Slover was piloting his CH-47 Chinook helicopter as the operations flight lead as the U.S. troops reached Caracas. Trump recounted on Tuesday. As Slover prepared to land, his helicopter came under machine gun fire from every angle, and Slover was shot 4 times in his leg and hip, Trump said. Eric maneuvered his helicopter with all those lives and souls to face the enemy and let his gunners eliminate the threat. Turn the helicopter around so the gunners could take care of business, saving the lives of his fellow warriors from what I've been told from what could have been a catastrophic crash deep into enemy territory, Trump said. After Slover safely landed the Chinook, he and his co-pilot, who was also wounded, take over and about ready to pass out, Trump said. Slover, who was still recovering from his wounds, used a walker to stand by his wife, Amy, as he was presented with the Medal of Honor on Tuesday by Lieutenant General Jonathan Braga, head of the Joint Special Operations Command. Forgive me, Braga or Braga. I'm trying to give the best with my dialect, but with my accent and dialect. I'm trying to give it to the best ability that I can on pronunciation of his name. You must forgive me for this. I'm also reading a little bit too fast and off the cuff. I need to slow down. 10 other service members who participated in the Maduro mission will also receive medals at a private ceremony that will be soon held at the White House, Trump said. Immediately afterward, Trump announced that Williams will also receive the Medal of Honor for his aerial duel against the Soviet MiG-15 fighters that was kept classified for decades, which we talked about just beforehand. Aforementionedly, we did mention it. The whole story, which I reacted on YarnHub, but I've not posted the video, and I will not post the video, not because I have any disrespect, it's just I felt like with the technical issues I was having at the time with my connection, it would have been too choppy, and it would have been a disservice to both YarnHub, to both Royce, and the whole story as a whole, and to you viewers at home, which, by the way, it's a reaction. I will link the video down below still. Check out YarnHub's video on the F9F Panthers versus MiG-15s. It is an absolute battle, because not only did he score 4 kills against Soviet MiG-15 fighters, confirmed, he also had to limp his F9F Panther with over 232 bullet holes home to carrier landing at high speed. With both cooperation of him and the carrier's captain, which I have to bring up because the captain himself is an absolute mad, not just the phrase mad lad, an absolute god of the sea, deserving of his own commendation for his service, landed his F9F Panther on a runway during a winter storm in choppy weather. That is fucking impressive, at high speeds, mind you. Yet on November 18th, 1952, Williams and 3 other Navy officers, Navy aviators, 3 others. The story is, though, and once again, it's a shorthand of telling the story. It was actually him and his wingmen that faced the MiG-15s by themselves. The 2 other men, that was at that time Navy protocol that if one aircraft had technical issues, his wingman must return home with him. So they basically divide the flight in 2 just before they can reach the point of engagement with the MiG-15 flight from Vladivostok. So it was him and his wingmen, who I will bring up that story once more, who took on those 2 MiG-15s. I don't know how to say this to you guys, but I believe his wingman scored 1 kill against the group. It was able to, and basically injured another one. It was able to get him to shake off of Williams himself. But Royce scored 4 of them, with 2 of them being head-on dueling gunfights. It is the gun camera footage that YarnHub used to render the scenes was, I mean, pretty much accurate to what actually happened, because this was the age of early jet combat. Before guided missiles, before missile systems had completely taken over, and smart weapons were beginning to become in the fray. It was basically the dying days of the gunfighter. But you have jets that could clock nearly the speed of sound. The MiG-15 being one of them. The F9F Panther less so, but when the Sabre would take over, it became basically duels to the death with jet fighters. And it is, to say the least, the last days of the true gunfighter. And it was also the last days of the true aerial ace. Not to say there hasn't been aerial aces since then, but it was basically the last day of head-to-head engagement aerial aces. Less of a chess game, more of a duel. And the case of Royce Williams is in particular interesting because a lot of those guys were trained, if not veterans, of the Second World War. So they were going from piston aircraft and prop-driven aircraft to jet turbines. And these jet turbines, basically, they sat on top of them. They didn't even sit. Basically, the whole aircraft is built around the engine. Not any other system, just the engine. Engine, guns, cockpit. They are, to say the least, some of the most fascinating eras of aerial combat to be witnessed. And it'll be a case we'll never see it again, but it's truly one of the most, in his case, it was, a lot of his equipment was also not even digital. Remember, there was not even early computers. It was still analog computers. He was still using analog equipment for a lot of stuff. The most he had was a gun sight But even then, the gun sights would also have their contingency backup analog light-up gun sight with the bulbs on the from the cockpit. It is an era that deserves the respect of every aviation pilot. And it's often forgotten, which I feel is a shame. Williams and 3 other Navy aviators faced off against 7 MiGs who had taken control of the base inside the Soviet Union were ordered by Soviet ground controllers to attack Navy aircraft, according to the Naval History and Heritage Command. It was his first aerial combat of the war, Trump said on Tuesday. Despite being massively outnumbered and outgunned, Royce led the takedown of 4 enemy jets and almost destroyed the other, vanquishing his adversaries while taking 263 bullets to his own plane and being seriously injured. He was also clipped in the shoulder as well. He basically lost control of the function of his arm, if I remember correctly, for the time he was flying the aircraft. On Tuesday, First Lady Melania Trump presented Williams the Medal of Honor. Williams was later awarded the Silver Star for his bravery, which was upgraded to the Navy Cross in 2023, which Biden did present to him, which I know, even though I'm very much in the side of Trump's camp for the most part, he's still a useful tool for things I want to see happen with both the states and for the world, and he is very much leading things are. Don't want to get too political and too depth in those woods. I must say that even underneath the Biden administration, I must retract what I said beforehand, the Biden administration did award him the Silver Star. It was still being presented from both Navy, his family, friends, veterans, anyone pretty much in general of the Veterans Union was saying, get this man the Medal of Honor. On Tuesday, First Lady Melania Trump presented Williams with the Medal of Honor. Because his mission was classified for so long, Congress had to pass legislation waiving any time limitations for the award in his case. Tonight, at 100 years old, this brave Navy captain is finally getting the recognition he deserves, Trump said. He was a legend long before this evening. So, I also want to cover Eric Slover a bit more. We're going to go back to the original article. Slover planned a mission, was led to the flight. Trump's had regard by 1,000 soldiers while preparing to land. Enemy machine gun fire from every angle, and Eric was hit very badly, leg and hip, one bullet after another. Trump said he absorbed 4 agonizing shots, shredding his leg into numerous pieces. For those injuries, Trump said Slover passed on to deliver commandos to the drop zone where the mission could be carried out. Delivering the many commandos who would capture and detain Maduro was the only thing Eric was thinking about then, the president said. Even as he was gushing blood, Eric maneuvered his helicopter with all those lives and the souls to face the enemy and let his gunners eliminate. We did read, I'm sorry to skip the quote again. After safely landing the helicopter at the right location, the mission could continue. Eric told his co-pilot, also wounded, to take over. The success of the entire mission and the lives of his fellow warriors hinged on Eric's ability to take searing pain. Yep. We saw that. Basically, it's reiteration of the prior article. We're going to, and here's the thing, I don't want to completely forget Slover, because the man himself delivered that mission on his crew with the CH-47, which, by the way, Delta Force, once again, we know about, from what we've seen of the footage and what we know about what happened, once again, the joke is if we sent the Navy SEALs in there, we'd have how many podcasts, how many reenactment dramas of how everything went wrong and everything, and their books and everything. Delta Force, they went in there and they just did what they needed to do. The Joint Operations General, no one's to say just Delta, basically everyone that went in there did what they had to do, and it was Storm and Norman Schwarzkopf style. But talking about our dear friend here, and once again, I don't want to skip Eric Slover because it happened so recently that Slover's case is going to be a bit more. I want to hear more about the story when it comes out in full. We do know more about Royce Williams, which I have to reiterate without the Yarn Hub video at my side. We're going to do Royce Williams' story, and I'm going to story of Royce Williams, SDP. This is by the SDPB. We're going to find out, because I gotta remember who wasn't the pilot of the Vostok crew. I'm gonna look it up. What pilots did Royce Williams face? And because Russia only conceded 3 kills, but truth be told, it was 4 from the gun camera. And that's what we're going with the U.S. numbers, because Russia was still trying to hide what they were trying. There was, even after the fall of the Soviet Union, the Russian Federation was still trying to play face, or try to save face. What face and shoot down. Also, under the Korean War, the Honchos were not allowed to bail out because if they got caught, it would cause a international incident. Captain Belyakov and Vendalov. Okay, Captain Belyakov. Captain Belyakov. Gonna look up these names quickly before we continue on. So Belyakov did survive. See his flight to UD Island. Their career, how was his score? I want to know his score. Volodikov, Belikov. No, that's a different man. That's Captain Belikov, MiG-15. Okay. I'm trying to figure out. Okay, I want to know. I know where we're going. I know I'm taking my time here. I want to know the service record of Captains Vendelov and Belikov, because I need to know how much. I need to know their kill, their tallies, because I know these guys were pretty much elite pilots to be stationed in Vladivostok for the Soviet Red Army's Air Force. I know these guys were very much like Soviets' top ace, the top ace of the Soviets that were not stationed in North Korea at the time with the honchos. All right, we can't find any of that, but we'll go back to SDP PB and get the full story again. Okay. On November 18th, 1952, U.S. Navy pilot Royce Williams survived what is perhaps the longest aerial dogfight in U.S. military history. He would face 7 Soviet MiG-15 fighter jets during one 15-minute battle. During one 35-minute battle, not 15, 35 minutes. After the engagement, military leaders were concerned the incident might mark a devastating increase of tensions between the U.S. and Soviet Union. Williams was ordered to keep silent about the events. Royce Williams grew up in Wilmot, South Dakota. His father was a grocer and a veteran of the First World War. He yearned to be like his father. Later in life, he developed a much greater appreciation for his upbringing and for life in northeastern South Dakota. I didn't realize the fortunate life I had. The openness, everybody friendly, looking after one another. Go out and learn to swim, learn to shoot. We used to play a lot of cowboy and Indian games and run all over as long as you came back before the lights came out and dinner was on the table. On in the summer before dinner. I know I butchered his direct quote. I still had to do change around from how I'm going to pronounce it. It was wonderful. And that is very much a high trust society, which I really wish still existed nowadays. This sounds like something my ancestors, my grandfather, grandmother, my grandmother, and especially out west in the prairies would have remembered. And it sounds like something my great uncles who did serve in the Second World War and Korea talked about. Very much in a different country, but when Canada was more with the United States back when. It was a much different time. While thumbing through photos of the San Diego Air and Space Museum, Williams stopped on a picture of him as a young boy and finally tells of one of his very first talents. Well, I have chaps and kind of a cowboy outfit. I was interested in being a cowboy at one point. We had Whipple Ranch quite nearby. They were famous for putting on rodeos and county fairs throughout North Dakota. I know the Whipple Ranch too, because when the rodeo kicks off in Calgary, I know the circuit, and a lot of them get ready for Whipples as well. They were famous for putting on rodeos and county fairs throughout North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. And I have a cousin that worked at the ranch, but I got pretty good with the lasso, and I lasso kids in the summer. And my oldest son, I tell him to, and by age 8, he have kids running by and give him a rope burn. Oh shit, man! You know what? His first talent. I did a couple lassoing back when I was a kid too. It wasn't like I was good, just didn't pursue rodeo. But absolutely, you know what? Dude was a natural born sharp shot. Already learning to hunt, already learning to shoot. I mean, that's basically upbringing in the Midwest at the time. Should be kind of like a general upbringing for most young boys. But he was already learning rodeo. If he was good at that point, he knew he was a sharp shot. He had great hand-eye coordination. This guy was ready to become a pilot. Williams brought that cowboy spirit into his career with the U.S. Navy, which began in 1943. During the Korean War, Williams noticed that reserve pilots were being called into duty. He was determined to serve his country. Williams was qualified on Corsairs, but he had his heart set on flying the F-9F Panther jet. He made a call to the commanding officer of the Panther Squadron, who just happened to be his executive officer of the ROTC unit at the University of Minnesota. His alma mater. His orders were changed the next day. Over a 37-year stint, the U.S. Navy, over a 37-year stint in the U.S. Navy, Williams got the opportunity to fly several different types of fighter aircraft. However, Williams still feels deeply connected to the Grumman F-9F Panther, a carrier-based fighter. Because that was the airplane he was flying when the unexpected happened over the Sea of Japan. The Panther saved William's life. Which we're going to quickly jump from here and talk about the Panther, because I want to bring the specifications. Because the Panther is a case of an early fighter jet that gets often forget in the annals of history. Because when people talk about jet fighters, they often jump from Second World War jet fighters to immediately mid-50s, basically, I won't say third-gen fighters. They will basically skip the second-gen jets. They'll skip the second-gen generation of jets, which this one was kind of like a 1.5 year, because this was introduced in 49, but it was basically started its program production around the same time as the Shooting Star. Not the Shooting Star, as the original, not Shooting Star, what the fuck was it? Oh yeah, it was the Shooting Star. So it was, in its own right, pretty much a interesting aircraft, to say the least. Let's go to, which one do I want to go to? Aero Corner, let's see the specifications. Because I don't need a full story, because I can tell his story, and we're already going into the story. I want to see. I should get specification, history, technical data. There's a website I used to use for everything. Naval aviation. It's gonna work. So let's get a look at this thing. Okay. The Grumman F-9F Panther was one of the United States Navy's first successful carrier-based jet fighters. Entered service in 1949 and played a significant role during the Korean War, where it served primarily in the ground attack and close air support roles. The Panther was powered by a single Pratt & Whitney J42 turbojet engine, giving a top speed of 575 miles per hour. It was armed with a combination of cannons and rockets, making it effective against both air and ground targets. The Panther's success paved the way for further development of carrier-based fighter jets by Grumman, including the more advanced F-9F Cougar. Wow. The F-9F Panther is an ex-American carrier-based fighter, first produced by Grumman, third of the U.S. Navy after the F-H-1 Phantom and F-2H Banshee. It was mostly remembered for its combat missions during the Korean War, mainly as a fighter-bomber. 78,000 missions, first enemy aircraft shot down Yak-9 fighter. Only foreign buyers remains the Argentine Navy, operated 1958 to 1969. Which is quite interesting, to say the least. So specifications, we need to just basically giving you what he had. He had this thing, of course, had the tip tanks, which were, I believe, I don't think were drop tanks. They weren't drop tanks. They can be dropped off. It's basically used as ballast and to stabilize the aircraft at higher speeds. Okay. We know top speed had a surface ceiling of 13,590 meters, which is, do that by 3.23. Pretty much close to a little bit over 40,000 feet. It's the max surface ceiling. And 4 HS-202 cannons. So let's go see notes. We'll probably see that. Armaments. Pre-missile is a pre-missile H fighter, armed with 4 cannons, and the spinal suite is a HS-505 with 800 rounds of ammunition each. They were fast firing, so pilots only need a window of a second for a deadly burst. The whole usable combat load was 1,270 kilograms, with 2, then 3, then even 4 attachment points as the series progressed. The F-9F could carry 6 unguided rockets, World War II, 5 inches, HVR types. It could carry also a limited load of free-falling bombs, which during his mission he actually had to jettison his bomb load with his flight when they heard about the MiG-15s. 2 454 kilogram, 4 227 kilogram, or 6 113 kilogram. All stock World War II models, of course. Panther deck trials on modified US World War II Essex class carriers and USS Midway, equipping all squadrons in 1950. Was present on all 3 Midway class carriers and a dozen Essex class. The Panther was also de facto primary fighter jet bomber of the United States Navy and Marine Corps. And was soon deployed in the Korean War as the latest kit. It became the Navy's most widely used jet in this war, despite being outclassed by F-86 Sabre at the end of the war. They flew 78,000 combat missions between F-9F, 2, 3, and 5 iterations, and were lauded as rugged aircraft capable of taking punishment and come back, and even shattering anti-aircraft heads. Pilots appreciated also its air-conditioned cabin, which is a luxury, by the way. They were still trying to figure out, even though the Second World War was very much a war of a global conflict, compared to the First World War, even though the First World War was still spanned the globe, it was how much of the stage was taking around the world for the Second World War. They just discovered that if you go in different environments, both pilot and aircraft have to be ready for vastly different climate conditions. Whether it be tropical heat, desert scorching heat, snowy winters, and frozen glaciers. At the same time, too, during these early jet developments, the Admiral Canada CF-100 Canuck was being developed, and it was basically the forelayer to any winter operations aircraft. So it was prized for having its heated cabin, while this one had an air-conditioned cabin. which is very much a luxury that we don't really think much nowadays, but back then AC especially is a fucking luxury. You wanna have a proper heated cabin, you gotta just use exchanging of the cooling system. You wanna have AC, you gotta fucking run a whole different series of lines and basically use Freon, boiling points, and evaporation points. So evap and both condensation points to get said HVAC working. So which basically Cadillacs. These things were Cadillacs of the sky for the US Navy, which is an absolute blessing, even though not during that time of Royce Williams' mission. And you consider the fact that when they would do tropical missions for most of Southeast Asia and, of course, the Argentine Air Force, this would have been a blessing in disguise. On July 3rd, 1915, Second Lieutenant Leonard H. Plogg, VA-51 score with an F-93F, the first U.S. Navy's kill in this war, destroying a propeller-driven Yak 9 which was taking off. Panther pilots claimed 7 McCoy and Gervik MiG-15s with the loss of only 2 F-9Fs, despite the fact the Fresco was recognized as a better plane. That was not the name of the Gervik of the MiG-15. Basically, if you want to know the name of the MiG-15, it was a bundle of sticks, but take out one G. Very interesting nicknames. Mainly because it was after it was named after the British cuisine of basically a meatball, liver with liver sauce or with Worcestershire sauce. Was claimed a better plane, notably due to its wing design, better speed, agility, and orbit. The first MiG-15 was shot down on November 9th, 1950, and it was a F-9F-2B from VF-111. Lieutenant Commander William Ammon over the Sinju bridges, Yellow River. Two more MiG-15s were shot down November 18th, 1950. On November 1850, U.S. Orskany and 3 other aircraft carriers in the Sea of Japan launched airstrikes against Hyeryong with 4 F-9Fs capped near North Korea's border with China. The team leader returned to the carrier with his wingman Lieutenant Royce Williams, and his wingman stayed and identified 7 Soviet naval aviation MiGs from the Russian mainland, apparently en route to the U.S. carrier group. The F-9Fs were ordered to attack. We're going to Royce's story. Of course, Soviet MiG-15s. Okay, we're going to go back to Royce's story very briefly, but this is the stage we're setting in this dogfight. And you can see that it was still very early jet fighting concept, very premature aerodynamics. Remember, aerodynamics for aircraft were still, it wasn't novel, it was not new, but it was still in its birthing and teething stages. And they were still using gun-armed aircraft as opposed to guided rockets. Tech was not up there yet for this type of weaponry to be put on these aircraft yet, and this was at the time, the current operation of what they could use for, or what they were going to choose to use in strikes and in dogfights. So with most Navy aircraft, what it lacked in speed and agility, noted here, because the MiGs could clock over 600 miles per hour. What it lacked in speed, and were very agile, by the way, because the MiGs and the F-86 Sabre, though the Sabre was larger than the MiG, were both based off, roughly believed to be based off. This is not a case of like the Horton-Ho 229 and the B-2 Spirit, because that is completely fucking bullshit. The MiG-15 was based off the TA-152 or Focke-Wulf 152 Huckabang, which is a concept aircraft made by Focke-Wulf as basically a Volksjager, or People's Fighter, closing to the end of the war. A lot of Focke-Wulf's engineers would end up going to the western side of Germany, where their main production facilities were when they were being captured, which is kind of, a good thing for them, because on the other hand, the Soviets, and Kurt Tonk's division were able to flee as well. Tonk, I don't believe, was ever prosecuted for war crimes, because even though he was a factory owner and main leader of operation for design and aircraft, I don't believe Tonk's factory, well, they might have had some slave labor, but I don't recall Tonk being prosecuted, because it was not a case of, hey, you actively knew this for years. It was like, very much at the end, because that's when he was able to split off from Focke-Wulf. It was basically forced and oppressed into using slave and very cheap labor. or basically civilian labor on top of slave labor. Going back to Royce Williams himself, here's his story. I actually have some models and pictures around my house. I have an affection for it because I went through some severe times with it, and it was like a dress-heeled horse that got me through. Grumman made a great, dependable product, and was great at delivering weaponry, and was also very good at surviving. What I was also getting back to about the aircraft is that, once again, with Navy aircraft at the time, it was not agility, it was not speed that made it win. It was a fast aircraft nonetheless. I mean, we saw that 576 miles per hour during early jet age. That was nothing to sneeze at. What made it, what most Navy aircraft pride themselves off at this time, especially during the Second World War and Korean War, was their durability and their firepower. Corsair was agile, but it was a big girl compared to the Japanese naval aircraft, which completely at the time were destroyed and gone up and just obliterated. Basically, you want something doubly agile, you weren't going to find out the Navy, but if you want something rugged, like just a workhorse, you found it. They didn't find that median ground like Focke-Wulf did with the 190, but even then, this is the United States Navy we're talking about here. They can produce it in massive numbers. The United States, like just the United States production, like massive numbers. I actually have some once again, on November 18, 1952, at the height of the Korean War, or the Korean conflict, Royce Williams and 3 other F-9F Panthers pilots launched from the USS Orskany in the midst of a blizzard. Their mission, intercept 7 Soviet MiG-15 flyers south of Vladivostok. The Panthers climbed through the snow to 12,000 feet. That's when Williams noticed the 7 contrails of the MiGs at over 50,000 feet. One U.S. aircraft encountered fuel pump trouble shortly before the engagement. That pilot, along with his wingman, headed back to the carrier group. Then the Soviets surprised American fighters by opening fire on the remaining 2 U.S. aircraft. The Americans were told not to engage, but Williams responded that it was too late, which, once again, go back to the Arnhem video. Yeah. They told him halfway through the dogfight to disengage, and at that point, they're like, we're in the midst of like basically a game of cat and mouse. The new Royce Williams and his Panther were alone in the sky with 6 MiGs. After more than 3 minutes of aerial combat in which Williams burned the skin on his neck from snapping his head back and forth to catch sight of the enemy, Williams shot down 3 more of the Soviet fighters for a total of 4 kills. Oh, sorry. Williams quickly crippled the first MiG and it peeled off from the flight, followed by Williams' wingman. 6 MiGs after more than 3 minutes of aerial combat. Yep, okay. Shot down 3 more MiGs and a total of 4 kills. He escaped one of the last 2 MiGs by making a 30-degree dive into a snowstorm cloud. His aircraft received 263 bullet holes and perforations. He barely made it back to his carrier. Fearing escalation of the Cold War, Williams' commander swore him to silence. Williams says he's never attempted to speak of his heroics until the incident was declassified. No, I was told not to talk about it and I just accepted it. Matter of fact, other things came along, and since it wasn't going to be mentioned, I more or less put it out of my mind. Peter Rolf Onstad, another former South Dakotan and Navy pilot, is a member of Williams' American Legion Post and Encinitas. No. Pardon me. Encinitas, California. I am so sorry for butchering that. I am so sorry. He's one of the several people who have been proactive in seeing that Williams receives a Medal of Honor for his courage on November 18, 1952. Onstad recounts the words of a Navy F-14 pilot describing Williams' service on that day. As a fighter pilot, we were never trained even to go more than 3 on 1. 2 on 1 is a dogfight, and most times the dogfights would be over in 35 to 50 seconds, he said. When I look at Royce's engagement, him against the 7 MiGs, I can always the same thing as you see when someone gets the Medal of Honor for throwing themselves on a grenade, he said. Royce Williams threw himself on a grenade, but he lived. Since the story was first published by the SDPP's Steve Zwemke in 2020, a campaign to upgrade Williams' Silver Star to the Navy Cross was organized. Finally, some 71 years later, Williams was presented the Navy Cross on January 2023. The Navy Cross is only awarded to service members who distinguish themselves for extraordinary heroism in combat with an armed enemy force. This is the U.S. Navy's second highest military decoration. In 2026, Williams was awarded the Medal of Honor, the U.S. military's highest honor for valor in combat. Williams retired from the Navy in 1980, and his medals now include the Navy Cross, 2 distinguished flying crosses, and the Medal of Honor. So there you go. So, going back just to the State of the Union, there's a lot of things addressed. But before I do that, I want to say thank you. I want to give, even though it's not my countrymen, I've said before, I feel more pride in what the U.S. has done. Has been doing recently, but is also done, then I feel like about a third of the U.S. population supposedly feels or wants to put up a fight against or wants to profit off of. I don't feel much patriotism for my country. They have backstabbed, betrayed me, and sent me and many other young men down the river to be fucked. But to both Williams and to, oh boy, I'm so sorry. My mind's in a tizzy right now. Let's just go. He was awarded Royce Williams. No. So, to both to both Army Chief Warrant Officer Eric Slover, it's earned every single title, and so has Navy Captain Royce Williams. A toast, metaphorically, because I don't have any alcohol on me. I don't have anything to toast you with at the moment. A metaphorical toast and a salute to you. As I said before, I'm not a service member. I have not served yet. I would have liked to, if I had pride in my nation. I would still like to for my nation if it did a 180 around. I would, and if the United States ever wanted someone, I'd more than happy to do it for my citizenship. I would do whatever the nation spoke me for my citizenship. Just made that very clear. But to men who serve their country that love them, and they love back unwaveringly, I salute you. I salute you for your service. I congratulate you on your recipiation. Your recipiation, the Medal of Honor. Salute the fallen of both those that died during the flood and in the DC attacks with their Purple Hearts. And I'll say this, even though once again people know me as a Canadian VTuber. God bless America. God bless the US. I hope the saying they say about empires falling 300 years is never true. The American experiment should continue to live on and should be the benchmark, if not the blueprints, of the original 1776 project. Sent up by the Founding Fathers, by the brave men that died to form that liberty. The US should be the benchmark, the original Declaration of Independence and freedom and liberties the US was built to protect. Should be the benchmark for the world. Should not be relying on them. Should be self-reliant as the US is, and we should be our own benchmarking culture as the US is. God bless America.